concerns. And so I want to give opportunity to, I'm not sure who's, if Matt, if you had a presentation, or Chief Perkins, if you wanted to go ahead and get started. But council members, I sent you all some of the questions that you had sent back to me. I just sent you all a draft, and so you could use that if after we hear from Chief Perkins, Chief Greenwell, or maybe we have Mr. Anderson. Anyone else here for the safety plan? Okay. All right. I'll let Mr. Perkins or Ms. Greenwell go.
Thanks, Mr. Dorsey. My name is Chris Perkins. I'm the Chief Operations Officer with JCPS, and it's good to see you all again. And thanks for inviting us to share some time with you this evening, and happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Mr. Dorsey had shared a few follow-up questions from the group that myself and Dr. Greenwebb and Dr. Anderson will share kind of where we are with certain things, and then kind of go from there. And I'll just kind of go in the order that I received the questions. So, Mr. Dorsey, if there's other things to throw in there, please do. Like I said, there's no presentation tonight. It's really just a follow-up to provide some clarification based on some items that you all wanted some additional information on. One of the first questions I think that was asked had to do with the accountability board that includes students, guardians, community members, and based on the policy and procedures that were adopted at the board meeting back in January. I can kind of talk to you a little bit about what's being referred to as the community data review team that will sit down periodically, and the gist of it is for data collection, analysis, reporting, and progress monitoring. So the school safety officer standard operating procedure manual, which is built into our policy as well, so that this is part of board policy now, includes guidance on how and what types of data will be reported and reviewed. And so once our school safety officers are hired and trained and in place, the Executive Administrator of Security Investigations at Stan Mullen, I believe some of you are probably familiar with him, he'll create a data review team. And through that, we'll establish goals for the programs and metrics to monitor and to assess the effectiveness and how well it's being implemented. And so the Chief of Accountability Research and Development and Systems Improvement, Dr. Dina Dossett, she is our data person for the district, and so we'll work hand in hand with her to ensure that we have an unbiased approach to gathering and synthesizing information to be able to analyze it objectively and provide, whether it be metrics or even if it's anecdotal feedback, how to provide a holistic overview with specific data as well on progress monitoring, basically to share with you all and the community how we're doing, so to speak. And so part of my job in supporting this work as the operations chief is to make sure that just kind of connecting the dots between our security staff and our Office of Accountability Research and Systems Improvement. And so periodically, I believe Ms. Porter, our board chair, requested, I think quarterly to start with, just to be able to provide data to the board of education on where we are with things. And so we look forward to being able to share that. I know that we'll be looking at data just specifically related to events and what types of events we're seeing trends in, but then also trends in the students and what types of demographics or racial makeup they make to identify if we're really doing our jobs with an unbiased approach, or if we're tending to show some disparities in that data to be able to address those specifically. And so, like I said, as this program gets implemented, we'll start pulling folks together to provide input on what types of data would be quantifiable and objective to be able to look at that would also be actionable. Sometimes we gather a lot of information and have a lot of data to look at, but it doesn't really inform us as to what we need to do with it. And so I'm firmly a strong believer in whether this is my math teaching background or just the way I'm wired, that data does not only give you kind of a pulse check on how we are progressing, but it also, I genuinely believe it serves to be kind of the answers to the questions we should be asking. And so, There's no such thing, as you all know, as good data or bad data. It's just what we do with it. And so that'll be forthcoming. Like I said, it'll involve multiple departments across JCPS and community feedback as well through those presentations. I think one of the other questions that we received had to do with current demographic data of our security staff that's in place for the district and schools. And again, there are two different pieces to this project proposal. It's now a project actually because it's been approved. But the one piece of it is involved our school safety officers, and those are our armed and sworn law enforcement officers that will be supporting schools from the outside when there is a crisis type situation. And then the other piece to that is the in-school safety administrators. And those will be administrative positions that will report to the principal, that will be part of the school staff and really responsible for maintaining a safe and promoting a positive and healthy climate within the building. Additionally, just trying to get through some of the vernacular, because you'll hear some words used interchangeably. We currently have what are called in-school security monitors, and they are not part of this new project proposal. They actually are already in the schools, and they've been around as long as I can recall. And their job really is in-school monitoring, if you will. You'll often see them out in the hallways, and I tend to think of them as hall monitors. And so they just assist with transitions, providing support to students and staff. And so they are not part of my piece of this or Dr. Anderson's as well. But what I can speak to as far as the current demographics of our staff that we have, at least from my end, for our current security investigations, law enforcement officers that are already employed by JCPS, 60% of those are African American, 40% are white, and 12% are female. And so I can get additional information based on our in-school security monitors, but again, they're not specifically part of this project proposal. The safety administrators, again, that's a new position that we've not even begun to hire into yet. So there's no demographic data on that as of yet. So that's kind of the first two pieces of it. I think there was another question about some of the school districts that we had looked at, really just to try to recreate a new model of how we can promote and provide support to our schools to ensure a safe learning environment. And I can tell you that this happened a few years back when we were first kicking around the initial idea, and that was to have a school resource officer in every school building. And so obviously that's morphed into a more comprehensive and wraparound type support plan as opposed to just having police officers in schools. But we looked at schools all across the country, from Atlanta Public Schools, Austin Independent, Charlotte Mecklenburg down in North Carolina, Cobb County, Georgia, Duval County, Florida, Fayette County, in Kentucky, just because that is the closest thing to a comparable school district in Kentucky that we have, although I think it's not a apples to apples type of comparison. We looked at Gwinnett County, Georgia, Oakland Unified in California, and so forth. And so those districts were identified to be somewhat of a comparable size to our school district, as well as having similar demographics and student enrollment makeup that we have. What we did not find was a model like we have presented to you. Ours is somewhat of a hybrid, and we were trying to capture the best elements that we saw around the country, and to be able to provide a school staff member versus an armed uniformed officer in the schools, but a school staff person that can serve as a liaison between students and administration, that's in charge of, like I said, proactively promoting a positive, safe learning environment while building relationships and establishing trust, but then also serving as a communications liaison with the outside support, law enforcement that my team's providing. And so that was really the takeaways. It was not a specific model we found that really had to offer what we were looking for, but it was looking at things like we saw some school districts that had like regional officers, and we thought, well, we could replicate that to some degree with I don't know what our technical term for them, but like geographic zones, if you will, in proximity to a handful of schools, that we would have one safety officer providing support to all of those, so that they could maintain that proximity for quick response. We also saw that there were some school districts that maybe didn't have a safety administrator, but had kind of a safety point person, if you will, in the schools to act as that liaison, if you will. So that's the takeaways that we got looking at comparable school districts. I think there were a couple questions, Dr. Anderson or Dr. Greenweb, if there's anything you would add to that, or talking about some of the student groups to work with and collaborate with the safety administrators. And the one last thing I would speak to that I think came up before I kick it over to them had to do with just a robust process for effective background checks. And I can tell you what we have in place and the new facets of this because of the extra layers, not only of training, but the preliminary work to ensure that we have not just qualified candidates, but the right candidates. And so our special law enforcement officers have to actually undergo 2 different background investigations. Part of it starts with our internal police force that we already have in place. That includes a national background check through what's called the NCIC, which is like a national database. We also do local criminal checks. We also have to ensure that our candidates go through a polygraph exam and a drug test as well. Part of our own internal background check includes checking references, workplace history, and talking to each one of those if there is prior law enforcement experience to ensure that there is no reports or documentation of anything that even hints at any type of discrimination or implicit bias or complaints lodged against potential candidates for related offenses. There's a second background check that's conducted by the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, and that's all before our candidates would even be able to be hired and then to be able to go to the Department of Criminal Justice training for that special law enforcement officer training and commission. They actually take a sworn oath of office that's administered and overseen by the county clerks, and they have to reapply to go through this background investigation every 2 years. So this is not just a one-time deal, and then we have these people like every 2 years we go through this process with them again. So that's the gist of how we're screening to make sure that, again, that we don't just have qualified, but we have the right candidates. And with that, Dr. Anderson or Dr. Greenweb, anything else you all would like to add?
Yeah, I could talk briefly, Dr. Greenweb, if you want to go first. Obviously, I don't want to.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on the background check portion just to add that, as Chris has mentioned, an entire additional layer of background checks required for those positions, but the district has a robust background check process. And part of it, just to address some of the things that were mentioned, part of it starts with the application. The applicants are asked to disclose things. If we do find later that they did not disclose something that comes up, they are subject to termination for falsification of their job application. So that is in place for all of our applicants, regardless of position. All JCPS employees also have to have an FBI and state background check that is administered through a third party, and a CAN, that's child abuse and neglect check, administered through the cabinet. So those things are also in place for all applicants, regardless of position.
All right, yeah, and so I'll just kind of piggyback on some things that Chris said. I'm Matt Anderson, Executive Administrator of Culture and Climate. And just so you guys know, for some added clarity around the safety administrator position and increased oversight, we set this up while the safety administrators will be hired and report to the school level principal. Our department will be overseeing a lot of their training and support and initial implementation as we get this off the ground, so we can be clear about roles and training and make sure we're also a part of the initial hiring process alongside the EP. So that's kind of my role and how I'll be supporting moving forward, is particularly around the safety administrators. Chris was right on everything he discussed around those visits. Del Quan and I were a part of a team that actually visited a few of those and some others, a few of those districts, to really try to analyze what was working and what wasn't. But particular to the questions, there's one on here about student kind of advisory group, and we've really tried to think through what that's going to look like, and we have some initial ideas. First, there's kind of 2 things that pop into my mind that are going to be incredibly important for this role moving forward, and that is going to be role clarity. So this is a completely new role in our district, and we have very clear guidelines for how we want these people interacting with our students and working within our schools. And a lot of your input, honestly, is a part of what that looks like. So that's appreciated. So we really want to be very clear with what these people will be doing. And that's going to start at the principal level. We're going to onboard principals and provide them very clear guidance on what the job descriptions are and how we want these staff operating in the buildings. Teachers, all other stakeholders are also going to need to know, so that as situations pop up, they're clear and they're calling them to the right types of events for the right kinds of reasons. And so we're going to be very clear about that as well. And in terms of onboarding with the student population, I believe almost all, and I know high school and I know most middle schools have a similar group. We'll likely start introductions with the principal advisory committee. You try to think about what's an existing place where student groups are already meeting to talk about school issues, and it's typically at that principal advisory committee level, as a way, again, to get role clarity to students and let them know that this person is going to be here and these are the various ways that they're going to be able to support. As we oversee them and implement the position throughout the year, we're going to encourage the safety administrator to also have a support group, a safety group within the school, that they can regularly convene around particular situations that schools might deem unsafe or students might deem unsafe, and really work within that group to address any other issues. Again, a big part of this, is we've said throughout, is developing relationships. So the second component of this that we're really going to encourage with this position is really just visibility. One of the best ways to build relationships with our kids is, yes, we can tell them this is what they're going to be doing, but we really need them to be visible. We need them to be in common areas. We need them to be interacting with our kids in the right ways, around the right things, at cafeterias, at dismissals. We need them showing up for basketball games. We need them showing up for band events. We need them to be visible outside, just the regular workday and in the community in that way as well. And so that's going to be another way that we see, and we'll try to build capacity with that staff. It's just having them visible and accessible to students so they can have those interactions. The last thing we want is this position, someone sitting in an office all day just trying to complete a form, and do all of that work. We want them out and about and working with the kids. And so there's a whole host of training. I believe we shared all of that with you, much of which is designed to at least understand where our students are coming from and give specific strategies that our safety administrators can use as they're working with students through situations, and just getting to know them and interacting with them as they are any other person in the community, so that we have issues arise where there's a level of trust. They know these people are here for the right reasons, and really trying to support. Keep in mind, a big thing that we've encouraged along this path throughout the proposal, and we'll be implementing, is we've made it very clear that we don't want this position to really do anything with discipline. We don't want them to be handing down discipline. We don't want them to be communicating to parents around discipline. We really want that to be a separate issue. We don't want them to act as responders to issues that are arising in class, or running referrals, or any of those things. That's not their job. We know that will definitely have an impact on their ability, one, to build trust with our kids, but also relationships with them. And we're counting on them to give us valuable information. And so we're going to rely heavily on that relationship, as I keep saying, to get that.
All right, appreciate it. Did anyone have anything else? Oh, all right. Council, I'm sorry, Dr. Greenwell.
I wasn't sure if Mr. Perkins was going to share, but just to give you an update, I mean, we do have the applications open for the SSOs and safety administrators, as Matt mentioned. But to give you an idea of the makeup of the applicants thus far, there are 60 current applicants for the SSO position. 70% are Black or African American, and 18% are female. And 43 have been moved forward for initial consideration, and HR is working with the remaining 17 to complete some application requirements. So just wanted to give you an update on what that pool's looking like so far.
That's good to know, especially that part about appreciate HR working with those other applicants to complete their forms instead of kicking those forms back out. Appreciate that. Anyone, Chief Perkins, do you have anything else?
No, sir. I think
Okay.
we did it all.
All right. Council members, you have any additional questions to what you heard?
I do. Appreciate the information.
Ben, if you could introduce yourself too. Council members, you could introduce yourself before you ask your question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ben Johnson, Assistant Director, Parks and Recreation. I'm also Chair of the Advisory Council. A couple of quick questions. In regards to this, answer to question number one, that seemed reactive. I believe from the conversation we had when the question was asked, it was more about working with the students and faculty and administrators in terms of how this would look, not so much just reporting back on data and data points. So that was my area of interest there. I like the demographic information, but I also want to make sure that we have the full picture. I heard for the armed forces, it was 60% African-American, 40% white, that's 100%, and 12% female. But also JCPS is quite diverse, so we need to get beyond black and white, not just in terms of culture, but also in terms of language. So if that's something that we can help with or reach out to other organizations to help with, I think that would be important. And I'm sure that since the application is out there, it's public, so I will be able to find that. I'm interested to see what's being asked and how it's being asked. Would it be appropriate for us to also see, or can we also see the polygraph questions? And even if we can't, one thing that's extremely important to me, particularly with that somewhere in the application process and somewhere with that polygraph, is to have the applicants affirmatively state that they have not had any kind of issues as it relates to race or gender or bias and how they have acted or treated students. Even though I'm not a filters guy, things happen in law enforcement where people resign before they get fired and investigations get closed and files don't have information in there. And then also legally, I know I work in Metro government, employers can only reveal certain things. So somewhere in there, I would like for the applicants, potential hires, to clarify that or be on the record of not having those kind of issues. Like, did you resign under risk of termination? You know, that kind of thing because of a behavioral thing. That way we can have those bases covered if something comes up further down the line. I'm done, thanks.
If I could add a point of clarification, that demographic breakdown that I provided is based on what applicants choose to disclose, and that is all that they chose to disclose. So sometimes they do answer by saying prefer not to answer, which they can absolutely do that. So that's what we have at this point, but I do totally appreciate your point in ensuring, and we do have questions about languages spoken fluently, conversationally, so that information is available to the hiring managers. And then there are some legal questions about, have you ever failed to be rehired, been asked to resign a position, resigned to avoid termination, or terminated from employment? So that is on our application.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And I know there was a question. You had a question when you first started being about the follow-up, I believe, with the student groups.
The accountability board.
Accountability board, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the way I was phrasing that question, I believe one of the ones that I asked was, are we doing anything with the kids to be a part of that proactively? And I do believe maybe Mr. Anderson sort of got to that and said something about a principal's council or something like that. That could be a way, again, to have some input from the students early on.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear, that I believe, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the advisory board is primarily for the SSO position and their data. The SA, so that would be the difference. And I was talking about the SA's kind of affirmation to the school. There's definitely district level student groups that I think that have already been in discussions with talking about including them in the advisory board.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council members with any questions? All right, going once, going twice.
You know, I can't let it go. Thank you, Daquan. Just quick question. You know, I'm still a little bit confused about the just the kid council in its entirety, because I guess I'm just not 100% solid on really their purpose. Like I'm not really 100% solid on the purpose of the safety officer as well. Like when I hear it, when I hear the safety officer, in my mind, I keep thinking about mental health counselors. It sounds like similar. And then the council, I mean, I think a kid group of community council, if that really informs and leads the way for school is a great idea. But what are exactly just the parameters of what the kid groups are supposed to do? Just real quickly, I know you kind of went over it, but it's just still not really clear to me.
Are you talking about the principal advisory, like where the? Are you talking about related to the safety administrator position or the SSI?
Yes, absolutely, and related to the safety administrator position.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. So what we're trying to do is come up with a way to initially make some contact with the student leaders that are already present in the group. So that's why we're going to start with just the role clarity piece. The principal advisory committee is a standing committee of students that apply to be in the principal's advisory committee. They meet around 1,000 things. It's kind of their way of bringing concerns to the principal to address larger issues as they come up, all of those things, and also communicate to the student body. So in this case, we would initially utilize that group to communicate the role of the safety administrator and how they're going to be utilized school-wide. Moving forward, and as the year progresses and as the safety administrator develops relationships with particular students, I do think there are opportunities for the safety administrator to lead student groups that talk about safety-related issues, such as maybe a bullying department. They would bring the bullying department in. They could have a conversation about the resources that are available to that student. If there are particular safety concerns that are going on, that could be formally brought to that group in discussion and collaboration with the kids around how that might be best mitigated or fixed. And really just another opportunity to formally open the lines of communications between students and the safety administrator and develop relationships with them consistently by holding regular meetings with that group.
All right, a little quick follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kumar Rashad, I didn't even introduce Kumar Rashad. I'm a JCTA representative on the board. Okay, you said you also mentioned that this group, the officers have nothing to do with discipline. So I guess that leads me to say that when the student advisory group are talking about safety issues going on in school, are we expecting, let me just say it straight up, are we expecting the students to basically become snitches in this whole thing?
No, not at all. I mean, at some level, we want them to feel comfortable coming to an adult in the building, as we would in any school, saying, hey, I feel unsafe in this situation. If it's an exit every day is being propped open by a kid and left, it can be around that. There's also, going to be opportunities for them to interact with them outside of that. So if I want to communicate, obviously something that I think is a potential safety issue, I know who that person now is in my building, and I can access them because they are visible in a variety of different contexts, in a variety of different ways.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking of the advisor, kind of the student group, to talk about larger issues around safety. Maybe there's not an administrator in a particular hallway during passing time. That's creating some issues. Again, anything that might show up at the school level around particular safety issues around individual students, I don't necessarily think that would be the place to have that conversation or that discussion, if that helps.
Yeah. And in our experience too, we are learning, especially when it comes to safety, it's important that we are as intentional as possible with having student voice, as opposed to expecting safety administrators to identify the students that they can engage with. Of course, they want to engage with all students, but student voice is very, very important, especially on the front end. But Mr. Rashad, your point is valid and well taken, and so appreciate that. Anyone else? All right. We appreciate Dr. Anderson, Chief Perkins, Chief Greenwell, others for joining us. Of course, we are here for you all. We would love to continue to work with you all. I know that you all have reached out to some of our other council members to participate in other things. We appreciate council members for helping JCPS out with that. Please, let's keep the lines of communication open. And so we could do what all we can to help our students out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thanks. You're more than welcome to stay on if you like. All right. Next, we will have Miss Amanda Everett Bush. Is it Dr. Everett Bush?
No, just Amanda.
Okay. All right. We appreciate you joining us. Ms. Everett Bush has been a great colleague to work with, has helped my learning curve with student assignment and always available regardless of the situation, how big or small. She's been a tremendous resource. And we just wanted to give her an opportunity because we all know the history of our district and the history of school busing, not only for JCPS in Louisville, but how we have led the way in the country. We know we're approaching some changes, so we wanted to give her an opportunity, one, to come before the council and just share with her and share with us at a high level things to think about, so that we as community people, as liaisons to the community and JCPS, we can begin to share information and address concerns and those things that are just rumors that are not necessarily factually based. I know that she will have more detailed information coming out soon, but we wanted to be able to just get her in here this evening because this was our regular scheduled meeting. So no further ado, give you Ms. Everett Bush. Thank you.
Now, I am glad to be able to join you all this evening and make this connection. I've been in student assignment since 2015, and several of the members I see on the advisory committee have been along the journey with me. And so Delquan is one of those. I see Mary Ann, so hello, how are you doing? But we are at a time, I will say before the pandemic, we had recommendations that we were wanting to move forward with, and the pandemic occurred. And it sort of put us in a place of pause, but I actually appreciated the pause because we were able to continue the work and really come with a recommendation that we feel will make a positive impact on our students. And so just to give you a couple of areas and where we are in the process, this is the first time in JCPS that we have a plan that we're co-creating with the community, with school staff, which is monumental because I will tell you, anytime there have been tweaks in the past, there have been individuals in a room that have developed a plan that maybe didn't have the level of input or collaboration. That is not how we are moving this time. So I am appreciative of that. In 2018, we developed a review committee with community partners, with school staff, with parent representatives, with JCTA representatives to really highlight what our issues were. And I will tell you those 4 areas are around our guiding principles, which are equity, overarching, diversity, access, ease of understanding, and choice. And so there honestly really hasn't been a clear definition, and we're not doing any of those well, which other than choice. But we are really at a place to where we're wanting to make a change. And so We have been working on this process over several years. At this point, I want to be very transparent about where we are. We've had an initial conversation for feedback from our board members. Our cabinet level district staff, assistant supes, and EAs have been provided information on the recommendations to provide feedback next Monday and Tuesday. All school staff will be provided information on the recommendations. And then Tuesday, and I'm going to email this information to Delquan if you all already haven't been aware, but the Courier Journal partnered with the Urban League, NAACP, and retired Black administrators to do a forum where it's going to be the first public event to go over the recommendations. So if you all have time or a moment to go down to the sports complex, I would appreciate your support because it's going to take us all to ensure that this is implemented with fidelity. And so I'll just go over just high level what we're looking at changing in the recommendations so that you have some knowledge of what those are. And so what we are looking at is providing choice for students, and I'm going to reference it as the choice zone. It is our satellite area, which is predominantly West Louisville, but extends past West Louisville, that historically has been bused to a suburban school and not had an opportunity to attend a guaranteed choice. And that will be the elementary, middle, and high. When we had our initial recommendations, we just focused on middle and high, and we were going to do a phase 2. The pandemic allowed us to have an opportunity to actually go back and add in elementary in the proposal. And so that will be a focus. A huge thing that we heard from the community when we initially went out was, okay, a choice close to home, that's great, but we want a quality option close to home. And that birthed the Choice Zone Support Plan. There will be details of that, and we will have a document listing out all of the recommendations and supports that the Choice Zone schools are going to have. But high level, it will be resourced and supported more than we ever have. And so I always caution individuals to say, in this moment, we don't want to allow fear to get in the way of an opportunity for our students. What we want to do, especially for the community and district staff, is to hold us accountable for doing what we say we're going to do. And so there are a lot of structures and policies that we are putting in place to ensure that that occurs. If there is a new superintendent or a new board, we want to make sure that it's not easy to veer away from the supports that we know the students need us the most have. And so that's what I really charge the community in leaning in to ensure that that is occurring for our students. We are also looking at aligning feeder patterns, elementary, middle, and high school. We have a complete disaster of over 90 feeder patterns just for middle and high school. So, and I'm talking outside of West Louisville, I'm talking the entire county. So this will be an improvement for all students. So no longer will you have a middle school that feeds into 8 different high schools. We are aligning elementary, middle, and high for all students to have an opportunity to travel with their peers, to have increased vertical alignment, for schools to be able to reach down to schools that they know that students are going to be transitioning from. And we've got it down. Elementary and high school is 100%. Middle school, just because of geographics, we have some areas where there are 1 to 2 middle schools, at the most 3, but schools know exactly where students are coming from. Individual students know what their transition is going to look like as they experience through K through 12. Dual resides, students in the choice zone. Again, that's our satellite area. Will have an option to stay close to home or leave their community. That's a guaranteed choice. The family is making that choice. It will not be school choice or student assignment making that decision for families. And we're really leaning in to having targeted outreach to be able to ensure that families are informed and engaged in that application process. lastly will be our magnets. And if you all don't know, that is something that is going to be a task for us. The foundation for magnets in our district were in response to white flight. And so that's what we have currently. And so we are committed to aligning our magnets with the purpose in what Magnet Schools of America came in 2014 and told us that we needed to do. We now have the political will and climate to move forward to ensure that we're increasing access for our students of color, that we have a transparent process that's equitable for families. And so in the recommendations, you all will see strategies that will help move us in that direction. So those are the 4 sort of buckets that we are going to be tackling. Again, it will be made public on Tuesday. I'm pretty sure the Courier Journal is going to be running a story on the recommendations, but I encourage you all to come out. Again, your support is appreciated because we have an opportunity. I know that trust is something that has been an issue in our district with the community. And so we have acknowledged that, and I've taken a stand on it. It's not about, finding joy when these recommendations, if they do pass. I'm leaning in on what are the outcomes that we will see for our students that need us the most, and how do we ensure that we get there? And so we definitely need the support of the community to ensure that that's going to occur. There will be a community accountability team that will be formed as a part of the support plan. Again, we are building in intentional structures to ensure that this does not fail. So that's in a nutshell where we are. I know that that's a lot of information, but I'm glad to be able to make this connection now. And even if you aren't able to make next Tuesday, we will be having a board community forum on the 29th. And then I am happy to come back to the advisory committee at any time after Tuesday to give the presentation here as well. Because again, we want to make sure that everyone is informed, that any misconceptions are cleared up, that the ask from the community is heard, and that everyone is on the same page moving forward. Because if this does pass and it's done with fidelity, this will be a major impact on our students of color. And that's what my focus is on.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. When you said the forum is this coming Tuesday?
Courier Journal Forum is this Tuesday. It's at the Norton Sports Complex.
What time?
At 6:15, and I'll forward the flyer to you.
Okay, excellent. And I can send that out to the group. And if council members, if you all could do whatever you can to share that with your networks and community, we definitely appreciate that. I think that answers Mr. Rashad's question in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Amanda, for that. And your candor, we really appreciate it. Anyone else?
Yeah. And so yes, I did co-serve, and it was great serving with you and the others. But it, just being honest, that was not a good process for me. And so I'm glad to hear that it got to where it got. And I'm just wondering if there is any plan to circle back to the people that co-labor, because we're going to be expected to help defend this policy. And I didn't even have this much information and served all that time. So that's not a good look, JCPS. The second question that I have is, and in fact, I was very vocal. At one point, I was like, take my name off this because I'm not going to be. So it's good to see that it actually shaped up into something that I feel like in lightweight support. And it's more than lightweight. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was, I wrote it down, the feeder patterns. So in this policy, what if somebody's child gets stuck in a pattern that is not working for them? Is there a way to switch that, or
yes,
it is? Okay, good.
Especially choice zone I'm just going to use an example at middle school. So Choice Zone students, again, satellite area, will have an opportunity to attend a new West Louisville Middle School, or I'm just going to give an example of Cameron. Mm-hmm. So they know at the middle school level, when they transition to high school, they still have an opportunity to either go to Shawnee, which will be the option close to home, or Ballard. If a parent wants to switch that, even at the middle school level, they go to Cameron 1 year, next year they want to go to the West Louisville Middle School, they can make that determination as well. So they are not locked in any path for elementary, middle, or high. They can make a decision each year.
Okay, thank you. So are they going to circle back to the committee?
So what I will say is, and this is, okay, so this is just me speaking personally. Mm-hmm. So after the committee convened and we came to a place, then we transitioned to a future state team, which incorporated resourcing high poverty schools, facilities, racial equity, and student assignment. What I see now, because the plan will, if it's approved, will be in place, is we will now have a community accountability team and supports in place to continue the review process that's formative and summative. If any adjustments need to be made, we're going to have a program manager that's dedicated to the support plan. That's what I envision it morphing into, because we're not going to be building a plan and coming up with recommendations. It's going to be more on accountability, structure, and review.
Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. And trust me, I don't want to come back in that room and do no more work on this. But I want JCPS to honor the years that people spent.
Absolutely.
At the very least, yeah, and at the very least, come back and close the gap, close the loop, and let us know what next steps are. Because if I were not on this call, I would not know what happened to all their work.
Which is craziness, because it was a long journey.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that feedback, and we'll take that back.
I was part of that journey too. All right. Anyone else? You said it's 6 o'clock Tuesday, right?
Oh, it's a 6. I'm gonna send the flyer just so I'm not saying the price.
Okay.
It's 6 o'clock.
I just pulled it up, but I will send it to you. So, like I said, make sure I'm not talking crazy today.
Okay. Any other council members?
Yeah, just one quick comment. When we're working on these things, we tend to point out how it's beneficial to Black students, to African-American students, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, this kind of correction and changes are beneficial to all students.
Yes. And
I believe we need to make sure that we stress that, because some people just think, you throw Black on anything, some folks just going to be against it. It just is what it is. But the fact of the matter is, all of these young, if we recruit more Black teachers, it's not just that they're positive role models for the Black students, it's for all the other students to see the diversity and leadership and learn to respect, honor, on and on and on. So that's just one of my things.
Thank you.
Amanda,
yes.
I just sent you a request. Did you get it?
You sent me a request?
Yeah.
In the chat?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'll call you to set up an appointment.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
This is Tyra Walker. I am representing JCTA. The magnet school, and maybe I missed it. I do apologize. How are they going to be impacted?
So, there are several recommendations. So we have a lot of work to do in magnets. And so Magnet Schools of America came in and did an audit and told us that we were not aligned with best practice. And what I always go back to is the purpose of a magnet is to increase diversity and to promote integration. So you should have magnet schools in the urban core, which we honestly do, but access for students in the urban core is where we have work. So one of the things that we are looking to do is have diversity targets and goals for our individual magnet programs so that they are more representative of the district's demographics. Right now, And that will be on a couple of ends. So we need to make sure that we have targeted outreach so that our applicant pool, that there are enough students to represent our district demographics of 30% category 1, 50% category 2, and 20% category 3. And I hope I'm not saying I'm incorrect, so don't quote me on that, but to represent what our demographics are. And so that's one of the things that will be impacted. And so when we talk about that, a lot goes into that. So we may have to have individual programs run their criteria through the REAP process to ensure that we're addressing any inequity. That's just an example. We're also looking at replicating popular magnets. So we have wait lists out the wazoo for individual programs that we know that we need to replicate. So that's another example of something that we're going to be working on with our magnets. There is a long list of things because we do have a lot of work to do and it's not going to happen overnight, but we will definitely be working to making our process more equitable with our magnets.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Have we, one of my bigger concerns, I guess two of them are, one is, have we done the work to figure out what is the funding formula? Because we all know Brown versus Board wasn't about Black students sitting next to white students or Latinx students. It was about resources.
Mm-hmm.
And have we figured out the funding formula to make sure that with this shift that we will be able to fund in a not equal but equitable way?
Yes. So a part of that is the new funding model that's been approved for middle and high school. We're working on elementary, but on top of that, Resourcing High Poverty Schools has a bucket of money. That money is earmarked mostly towards the choice zone in a menu of options that they can select from based on their individual needs at the school. Because honestly, that's where my thing is. A room full of Black students can be successful.
Right.
They need the resources and support to ensure that that occurs. And so, yes, that is definitely built in to the support plan. And you can see by level, it's not so specific that it boxes schools in because individual schools may need different things. So we want to make sure that it's equitable, that the funds are there. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because we all know that, PTA funds vary based on student population, and we know that that there's a disparity there.
Yes.
And some students get some things because of those, and right. So, but anyway, my other question is, have we looked at ramping up some of our academic programs as far as this? You might not be, this might not be your shop, but have we looked at ramping up some of our academic programs to bring more balance and options to some of the schools that don't have maybe some of the academic programs that other schools have?
Academics as in clubs or magnets?
Academics as far as like Academies of Louisville.
So that's a part of the magnet strategy.
Okay.
Is reviewing current magnets. We may need to reimagine current magnets. There may be some that need to be removed. There may be some that need to be added. So that is a part of the magnet strategy. Yes.
Okay. All right. Dr. Speaks, did you have a question?
Yes, I did have a question. As far as, I know this is really addressing more so the student assignment component as far as choice and all of those things that concern clusters and all of that. Are there changes also that we will see as far as transfers are concerned, with that being a part of the student assignment plan?
So there may be updates to better align entrance criteria. It won't be something that I will say will probably be a part of the conversation on Monday or Tuesday, but we are constantly looking at ways to make our processes more equitable. Where we have a lot to tackle, but that's definitely one of the things that's on my list.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As a principal, it is very frustrating to sometimes deal with that process. So I just wanted to know if that was a part of the equitable conversations we're having.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate that. It's definitely a big issue because I get that all the time when I'm at the schools. Anyone else?
You had mentioned that like there's a lot of work to be done in terms of magnet schools. And I wondered if there is a committee similar to the one that was developed for like the new student assignment policy, but like relating specifically to magnet schools.
So I will say, 2014, an audit was done by Magnet Schools of America. Then we had a magnet steering committee that looked at the recommendations. Then we had the student assignment advisory review committee that also developed magnet recommendations. So I guess I say that to say, we know what we need to do. We've been given list after list and thing after thing. We're now at a time where we're ready to implement those things. But I will say, we are always open. And if we did need to form a committee on magnets, then I'm absolutely open to that. But it's time to actually put the work, implement the work, because we've been sitting on this for, I don't know how many years is that? Is that 8 years, 7 years? And they told us exactly what we need to do. And so in the future, if a committee needed to be formed, but we have the checklist of things just from those 3 committees that we need to work on already as well. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you mentioned that there was like a new funding model for middle and high school. Is that available somewhere to the general public?
Yes, it was actually a board approved process. And so it's in the board materials. Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think Mr. Sullivan has a question.
Okay.
Sure. I was just wondering if, and I may have missed it, if there was anything mentioned when you're talking about the choice zones.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've always wondered about was increasing access for really parental access, like access to the schools, ways to be involved, and in coming up with how those were set up. Was that part of the discussion, or are there going to be new ways that you can increase that parental involvement with the schools? Because I know now when a school is an hour away, it's a lot harder to be part of it.
So I think it's 2 things. So one, if a family does make a choice to attend a school outside of their community, that's a guaranteed option for them. I will say that schools have done a better job in ensuring that they have parent-teacher conference in the community or whatever that looks like. I think that Dr. Polio speaks of sense of belonging and being close to home, having that. I am of the mind that whether you choose to go to Cameron or whether you choose to go to the new West Louisville Middle School, that sense of belonging needs to work in both. And so we will collaborate a lot with Crystal Hawkins, who is our parent engagement coordinator and specialist, to ensure that that is a part of the conversation as well, because that needs to occur at both. Even if it is 30 minutes away, we want families to feel connected and students to feel that sense of belonging in either.
Okay. I did have a question. If Ava was on here, she would probably ask, and you might have touched on this, but is there a communications plan to help with the Latinx and our other ESL students and families?
So the communication plan is still being developed, I will say, but yes, those populations have been populations that we've targeted in the past and will target. After the board community forum, April and May will be dedicated for community feedback with organizations. And so they will definitely be included in that time. We're looking to hopefully go to the board for approval before the end of May. So the kickoff, the 22nd, community feedback up until the final board presentation. And really, we've been changing as we've been receiving feedback. And of course, that will continue as we engage.
Okay, thank you. I know that she's usually on here. She's with La Casita. And I think, you know, they're very willing to work with us and will help with some of that trust factor as well. All right.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Any questions? All right. And so it's Tuesday at 6 p.m. I know I will be there, Lord willing. And I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate all your hard work. Appreciate your candor. And not only is someone leading this very important and pivotal work, you are also someone that's actually experienced lived it as a student. She has a story to tell about being bussed all over Jefferson County.
Yes.
So
and raised my children in West Louisville as well. So yes, I've been with it for a while.
Yeah.
But I am excited about the change. I will say, you know, as being an individual of color, I am proud of the district for taking a stance and listening to the voice that's not the loudest. And so I'm appreciative of that. We just have to make sure that it's implemented with fidelity. That's where my focus lies.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
And I'm getting ready to send you the flyers now, so you have it.
Okay. Is that a attachment or a link?
Attachment.
Okay. Well, I'll forward it out to the group.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? All right. We're going to let you get out of here, Ms. Avery Bush. We appreciate you, and hopefully see you Tuesday.
Yes, you will see me on Tuesday. Thank you all for allowing me to take some time with you this evening.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
Daquan,
yes,
I would like to emphasize that all of us be at the meeting on Tuesday, because Amanda gives a really good slide presentation, and this is really an important meeting. So please, everybody, try to show up. I'm sure you will have some questions, but please come.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Owens.
Gotcha.
All right. So in closing, it's about 6:38. We usually don't get finished this early. I just want to emphasize what Ms. Owens said. I don't know if you all realize, but the Advisory Council for Racial Equity is very, very critical to the work of the district. As you all see, we're doing some work with the Wallace Foundation. We have a grant for $8 million to do some equity leadership development work, as well as doing like an equity audit on the district. And part of that is looking at our definition for equity. So if you haven't had a chance to give me feedback, it doesn't take long. Just read over it. If there's any changes or edits, or if it's totally off base or if it's right on point, please just give us that feedback. We really appreciate it. They definitely wanted to hear from Acre. And also, This is March, so we'll be coming up on really not one of our last meetings for the school year in May. So we've covered, we met with academics, teaching and learning. We have met with the safety plan now twice. And we also have, of course, had student assignment. And then earlier in the year, you all were very, very pivotal with the racial equity update and trying to move the work forward. As a result, our racial equity work within the schools has become very comprehensive. I know some of you all who work in schools have seen the difference. And we still have a whole lot of work to do with trying to hold ourselves accountable, but because of you all supporting and pushing and doing the liaison work in the community, we are finding some successes in the midst of all the challenges, but yet at the same time, we really need ACRE to continue to push on us to, like Amanda said, to hold us accountable and encourage the community to be engaged, because it's really all of our work. And so I just want to give a few more minutes. It's now 6:40. We could take 5 minutes to just to stop and just think about what are some of the things that you would like to hear or we can discuss next meeting, or guests that I can invite that you feel like would be primarily relevant from where we are. I try to this year. I try to make sure we were bringing in relevant current issues and making sure that we got the weigh in on it. So, any thoughts of what you would like May's meeting or July's meeting to be about?
Yeah, just real quick, I know that I had a conversation with Dr. Polio maybe about a year ago about discipline demographics, basically. Discipline demographics amongst employees, and just start looking at some numbers, because I know too many fellow Black educators that get written up way more than their counterparts at their schools. So I think we got to start looking at those numbers, because we talk about safety for the kids, but we got to talk about safety for the adults as well.
Right. Especially with our retention issues.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't have a specific idea, but I have a question.
Okay.
Just to the question you just asked, would it be possible to, if somebody started like a shared Google Doc or something where people could just put ideas in there and then that you could just pull from it? That way it's not going back and forth, but just, if you had basically like a content box and people could say, oh, this sounds like a good thing we could talk about. So then you can pull from it, and saves you the effort and trouble trying to ask people or doing it back and forth.
I have a list, but I just like to make sure I hear from you all and keep it open as well. But yes, no, that's a great idea, Terrence. Thank you.
What's on your list?
Oh, well, I would actually like to I'd like to brief you. I'm not for sure if I even shared a whole lot about my work that I do. Wear a few hats in addition to ACRE, but my primary role is supplier diversity, making sure that minority and women businesses have opportunities with the districts, specifically, primarily rather, with in our capital projects. As you all know, the capital projects are worth millions and millions of dollars. And to be quite honest and candid, it could be a challenge trying to make sure that we are implementing practices, behaviors, tracking, supports, engagement around reaching our goals. In the past we have struggled to reach our goals, and there was not a whole lot of awareness or holding us accountable for that. But that has since changed. I've been in my role, I guess, over 3 years now, um, working with not only in our department, but when I took on the role, I requested to support. So we partnered with our technical liaison, which is the 7 p.m. group, who is our partner in supplier diversity solutions. They pretty much help us not only identify minority women-owned businesses, but they also help us monitor that they stay in communication with our businesses that are own projects. But the challenge is once again just making sure that we're doing everything we can to not only be inclusive, but bring businesses along, majority companies along, and because with the capital projects, they are we're really dependent on that general contractor to do the due diligence of good faith effort of reaching out to our minority and women-owned businesses, and so a lot of the work when you dig into the minutia of how it's reported, and like for instance, we were only tracking stuff on the front end of the bid, but not going back to see if it actually took place throughout the project like it was proposed. So that's just some of my work. I don't know why y'all got me started, but probably all day. But that's one of the areas, of course, like Mr. Rashad said, looking at discipline. Student assignment was a big thing I've been wanting to get in there. Looking at our hiring, and really just another thing is making sure that we are constantly aware of where our students are, especially our marginalized students are academically. That's the main thing to me, is making sure that we're doing everything we can to improve our academic outcomes. I know we experienced a pandemic, but yet at the same time, people's lives are still going on, and we know that education is very, very critical to the quality of life in our community. And so making sure not only we're doing what we're doing as far as teaching and learning and academics in the classroom, but how is that connected and how is that relevant for students that are going into the workforce. And so that's just some of the things I'm thinking about. Any other thoughts? I know it's St. Patrick's Day, so I don't know how many of you all celebrate, but we got a few more minutes left, and I'm more than willing to let you off early if you all don't have any questions or concerns. Mr. Johnson, your screen came on, so I assume you wanted to mention something.
Did you really say something about some St. Patrick's Day?
Man, I just had to say
it's still Black History Month. What you talking about? Patrick didn't celebrate Black History Month, so there's that.
Well, yeah, we on YouTube Live, so I gotta try to be, all right. I try to be as inclusive. Some of us, got diverse backgrounds.
Everybody just getting all emotional and sensitive.
Right.
Why?
Exactly.
Got a green drink from Starbucks this morning.
Don't tell on yourself. Don't tell on yourself. Don't talk too much.
It was accidental.
How much you got a green drink? Don't slip up because it's after 5.
All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and ask Abdul to sign us off of YouTube. and so, if you all want to stay and conversate, you're more than welcome. Thank you so much for you all. Y'all just continue to make me proud the way y'all show up. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Mary, for taking notes and keeping us up to date with that. And you all just thank you for just showing up in other